Welcome to this presentation entitled Cumulative Impacts of Roads, Railways, and Other Human Development on Semi-Domestic Reindeer and Indigenous Transhumance Systems. This is a joint presentation by me, J.O. Heldin, at the Swedish Biodiversity Center.
And me, Thomas Kohmonen. I'm a GIS expert and I'm a reindeer herder from the Gabna Sami reindeer herding district.
Now, as all of you at this conference is probably familiar with, large roads and railways may block the movement for ungulates and fragment the landscape together with other anthropogenic barriers and disturbances in the landscape, such as industry, energy plants, power lines, pipelines, tourism facilities, and other built-up areas. And the restrictions of the free animal movements are particularly problematic in areas where the animals conduct seasonal migrations, as in the case for ungulates in northern Scandinavia. These species migrate up to 400 kilometers between summer and winter areas. And on the way, they encounter many obstacles. For example, heavy traffic or fenced roads and railways. Now, contrary to what Christmas tales may tell us, reindeer cannot fly over such obstacles, but in reality, they struggle with finding their way through along their preferred migration routes. This lower photo is from a previous major migration route for reindeer of the Gabna herd, now cut off by the mining town of Kiruna. And we will come back to this case soon. Reindeer in this region are semi-domestic, meaning that they are herded and tended, but move freely most of the year in their natural habitats, largely following their natural and prehistorical migration routes and seasonal ranges, and subsisting on natural feed. The reindeer are integral to the indigenous Sami communities in a traditional transhumance system, which can be described as a type of nomadism where herders track the seasonal migrations of their livestock.
And we want to present the case of the Gabna Sami reindeer herding districts in the northern part of Sweden and the northern part of Sweden, I should say, I'm sorry. And the reindeer shifts areas over the year depending on seasonal requirements. And similar to most reindeer herding district, the Gabna district has an elongated shape, following the landscape structure with valleys and mountain ranges which naturally steer ungulate migrations. As Sami, we acknowledge 8 different seasons, and they are all relevant for the reindeer's annual cycle. Spring is of course considered the start of the reindeer year. Females seek undisturbed areas for calving on the border between the forest and the mountains. And spring summer, as we call it, and summer, the animals walks further west, escaping insect harassments in the high mountains and browsing and grazing on grasses and herbs in natural pastures. And autumn summer and autumn, animals move further east towards the rutting areas, gathering for autumn migration, and they switch their feedings to fungi for building up their fat reserves for the winter. And autumn, winter, and winter is spent in the lowland forests and heathlands. The metabolism of the reindeer is adapted for feeding on lichens, and especially tree lichens and ground lichens. And then comes spring, winter. Animals gradually starts moving westwards toward the calving areas, up and towards the mountains. These indispensable movements between seasonal areas rely on a number of crucial migration routes, and including stopover areas, allowing the animal to feed and rest undisturbed in order to be able to continue moving. But now, in the last decades or so, this region has seen a dramatic increase of human encroachment due to rich mineral deposits and subsequent urban development and transportation routes between mines and to the marine ports. These areas and the area surrounding Kiruna and the northern part of Sweden has been labeled Europe's Klondike. And not surprisingly, measures to mitigate the impact lag behind, unfortunately. And here we come back to the example with Kiruna, a rapidly growing town and mining area situated centrally in the Gabna reindeer herding district. The town and the industry requires transport infrastructure in different directions and attract, of course, variously secondary developments such as leisure homes and outdoor tourism, including ATV, snowmobiling, and dog sledding. The mine, housing, roads, railways, and loss of habitat has effectively cut off the traditional migrational route. And the reindeer and us reindeer herders have now to find alternative routes around the town. However, also the alternative routes are disturbed and cut off by additional roads and other development. And using them is difficult and may entail animal fatalities, restricted feeding opportunities, and increased stress for both animals and herders. And of course, a loss of important time to reach the pastures and the grazing areas. On the level of the entire district, the cumulative impacts have caused a complete or partial loss up to around 65% of available land for reindeer. Centrally in the district, there is a distance of more than 60 kilometers where the animals have to cross multiple infrastructural barriers with little or no peace in between. In addition to this, industrial forestry has dramatically decreased available feeding in the winter range by cutting off lichen forests and creating clear cuts and dense young forests, which is showed down to the right in turquoise in the satellite image. These areas contain little ground lichen, which the reindeer rely upon during winter. Here, also climate change adds in, as temperature fluctuates, an increased frequency of winter rain further locks ground lichens under ice and crusty snow. Less available food means that the reindeer must move longer distances to find food and also scatter within the landscape, which in turn make them even more impacted by barriers in the landscape. And on top of this, of course, comes a number of disturbances, mainly from leisure activities that are distributed in the entire landscape, often erratic and sometimes even illegal, again, increasing the need for reindeer to move to find refuge.
So for the reindeer, as for wild ungulates, these cumulative impacts, barriers and loss of migration routes reduces individual condition, the fitness, reproduction, and winter survival. And in effect, the cumulative impacts of roads, railways, and other human developments threaten both the reindeer population and the traditional lifestyle and livelihood of the indigenous communities that depend on the reindeer. And the Gabna case is not unique, but similar developments occur or are expected to occur in the entire range of the reindeer herding Sami people in Northern Europe. In order to avoid migration bottlenecks, reindeer herders try adapting by increased tending of the animals and have started to transport part of the herds by car to the winter range, or keeping the deer on supplementary feed over the winter near the summer ranges. While many individual reindeer in the area still conduct the long-distance annual migration between upland meadows in summer and lowland boreal forests in winter, this natural system has started eroding. Now, studies on migratory moose indicate similar impacts, that is, increased difficulties to follow traditional migration routes and accordingly change in spatial ecology and difficulties in reaching seasonal resources and other fragmentation effects. We argue that reindeer herders have an extraordinary insight in the ecology and behavior of their reindeer. This comes by their close contact with the reindeer, by frequent monitoring of animal condition and reproduction, monitoring of movement patterns by numerous GPS-equipped animals, and by literally following the deer on migration. Despite some functional differences between semi-domestic and wild species, we believe that the study of reindeer can be a door to better understanding the cumulative impacts also on wild ungulates and other wildlife, of which our knowledge otherwise tend to be limited and rather scattered. By this, we thank you for your attention.
Kiitos Etnak. Thank you.